until 3:15, followed by the players until 4:30. Make sure you reference this gold sheet of paper. It's got a lot of pertinent information for this season on it. I'll just emphasize a few things on that sheet of paper. New this year, for security purposes, all media will be required to enter Kinnick Stadium at Gate B, as in boy. So it's a little bit of a hike from ramp 3, but Gate B is in the southwest corner. So everyone needs to enter the stadium at Gate B this season. Reminder that parking passes are digital again this year. So we ask that as soon as you receive those, that you download them, because those links do expire in about a week or so. Then we would need to resend those if you didn't download those to your wallet on your device. For those of you coming to Kids Day tomorrow, just like past years, we'll be observing practice in the east stands, and then we'll talk to Coach Ferentz on the field afterwards. And lastly, there's a transcript today. We ask that, especially those of you in the back, if you could kind of speak up so the transcription service can pick up your questions, that'd be appreciated. And we'll turn it over to Coach Ferentz.
Okay. Thanks, Matt, and good afternoon to everybody. Appreciate everybody being here. And I guess this is our official media day. We kind of had one up in Indianapolis, or over in Indianapolis, a couple weeks ago. So just start out with a couple comments and then open it up for questions, certainly. I think for some of us, this is our 25th media day, August media day together. So certainly appreciate your efforts and longevity, and appreciate everybody's efforts in covering our team. Sadly, I just want to mention a little bit tough to look out, and there are two familiar faces that are missing, certainly with Don Lund and Steve Patterson's passing. And both those guys were very thoughtful, very professional what they did, and just want to take a moment and recognize them and honor them for the great work that they did, and miss our interactions moving forward here, certainly. The beginning of a new season is always kind of to me exciting. I'm sure you're as eager and anxious as we are. I know as coaches and players, I think we all feel the same way, so share some commonality on that for sure. Before I get to football, we'll just talk a little bit about the gambling issue. I think, as most of you know, there's a ongoing betting investigation going on that is underway currently, and basically it's an open investigation right now, so not a lot I can tell you. We'll continue to cooperate. And but our biggest thing right now is focusing on this season, and we'll handle each case basically individually as they come. Really, then I look at it, there are two basic levels here. You've got the DCI involvement, and then, which is obviously significant, but beyond that, as it pertains to our football team, the NCAA involvement also in the rulings that they'll make. So one thing I can tell you, I think it's become pretty apparent that sports betting is common in football in general, just athletics in general. Based on an NCAA survey I saw a couple months ago, it's pretty prevalent on every college campus, not only with the athletes, but also just general people. And certainly, as I've learned in the last couple of months, it's a big part of what's going on just out there in the general public, although it's hardly a new phenomenon, just a lot more available now. So as I stand here right now, I think, again, the one thing that can't be compromised, the integrity of the game. That's first and foremost. That's got to be protected, and that's where everything should start. We will continue to cooperate. I think everybody involved has done a good job of that. That'll be ongoing, and as we move forward, just hope that, whoever's making decisions, they're thoughtful. Hopefully they're making appropriate decisions, and then, being timely would be appreciated as well. So that's basically what I have to say about that. Transition into football. This is 20 plus years of doing this now, and really you go in the same year, or each year, with basically the same thoughts. Probably the one thing that does change in time is you're a little bit more appreciative of just having the opportunity to be in a really good place and have a chance to work with good people on all levels, on a daily basis. And I would take that back to my time here in the 80s as well, the 9 years we were here during that period. That really hasn't changed. I think that's what really makes this so enjoyable. And, the reality is, coaches are evaluated typically by wins and losses by the outside world, and certainly get that that, understand that. That is understood. It's a given. And, when we line up, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to win football games. Certainly that's our job, and that's what we're all playing for. It's a goal. But the bigger picture is, really, not many of our guys go on to the NFL. Not many of them have long careers. It's just a matter of statistics, and every one of them have a chance to graduate. And then, basically what we're hoping is as they leave here, they're better prepared for their adult lives. And really the satisfaction, I think, in coaching is when players come back to campus, whether it's a networking event, legacy weekend, or just, bringing their family by, whatever it may be. And just hearing, the stories and, hopefully hearing that some way their experience in the program helped them be better adults, better citizens, employees, more importantly, spouses, fathers, those types of things. So that's really what's, I think, what's most enjoyable. And I think the older you get, the more you appreciate that. As far as preseason goes, we're basically 8 days into it now. It was good, to visit everybody in Indy, and at that time, a lot of anticipation. You can only meet so long, you can only talk about it for so long. At some point, you got to get going on and get doing it. And so we got together a week ago, Tuesday, had our first meeting, hit the field Wednesday, and finished our 8th practice this morning. And as I said back in Indy, basically every season's a new challenge. It's a new start, fresh beginning. I really try to encourage everybody working with the players, our entire coaching staff, to look at everybody with a fresh eye. And I think it's especially true in high school and college coaching, although there's some of that in the NFL as well. But, players change, and they change sometimes dramatically, sometimes not as dramatically. But, it's really just, I think that's the fun part about it, just seeing how they do progress, how they improve. And that's what we're trying to sort out right now. So, as I said in Indy, I think we had a good summer program. Now we're 8 days into it, and like the way the guys are going about their work, we're certainly not game ready, but, I think so far so good, and the guys are moving forward. One thing of note, I think, this year is a little bit different. They made note of that back in January, and certainly every conference since that time, with the infusion of transfer players, some new players, it's a little bit different dynamic, and it's kind of been enjoyable actually in a lot of ways to work with some new guys. And just, one quick reminder, coaches learn from players a lot more than players learn from us. Sometimes just our first day of practice, we got McNamara out there running the offense, and I think probably about 6 or 7 fall starts in the first day. It just dawned on me, he hadn't worked with our team. He didn't work with the team, the full team, back in spring practice. He did 7-on-7 and individual stuff, but no teamwork. So, if I was a little smarter, maybe we would have done a cadence drill or something like that in our meetings. But anyway, we worked through that. But it's just a reminder that, when you have new guys coming in, there's a new chemistry, some new equations going on. And I think the guys have done a great job really adding to our football team. So pleased with what I've seen thus far. So, just in conclusion, we're pretty much healthy. You'll see some guys not working tomorrow. It's mostly soft tissue stuff. You expect that in preseason camp. There's nothing right now of note, nothing to panic about. So just clue you in on that one. And then bigger picture, again, I'm really pleased with the players so far. Their energy's been good. Their attention to detail's been good. And I'd say the same thing about the coaching staff. They're doing a great job teaching our guys. So really, it's been a positive 8 days. And what we've got to do now as a football team is finish up tomorrow. We'll do our media day activities this afternoon, meet tonight, look at this morning's film, and then we need to finish out tomorrow to finish that. It's basically a third block that we've had in our preseason period. So, we're hardly ready for game action. You'll see that tomorrow, but I think you'll see a lot of good energy, a lot of guys doing some good things out there. And really the challenge is how we run the race here the next 2 weeks. We've got a good base established, finish up tomorrow, and then hopefully the next 2 weeks, be 2 different types of weeks, but with school starting here a week from Monday. But nonetheless, really important weeks for us as we get ready for the season. So that's kind of where we're at, and I'll throw it out for questions.
Kirk, when we were in Indianapolis, it didn't seem like you were either aware or didn't know that there were players who had bet on Iowa, and in the last 2 weeks there have been players on the current roster and players who were on the roster last year who've been charged with, and among their deeds were betting on Iowa. Was that new information for you?
Yep.
And what is your, I guess, opinion about that? And are any other current players under investigation, either NCAA, currently practicing?
Yeah, it's like a lot of things. My answer would be we'll see, and we'll see. Right now, I know it's I know what I've read, just like you have. It's been kind of an interesting process. An outside law firm has handled it internally for us, as I think you know. So they've been gathering information. They've been, working on that in cooperation with the athletes, and some of the athletes have attorneys for obvious reasons. So at some point, all that information, maybe it already has gone to the NCAA, and that'll be reviewed by them. I mentioned the DCI level. That's curious to me. Only in that, I've had a little time to think about it now. There's 49 states by my count that play football, have college universities that play football. I think it's interesting that we're the only state I'm aware of, and I think it's interesting too, more than 2 colleges in our state. So it's kind of interesting how that all came about. Not excusing anybody that's involved. And then also, I assume they've, maybe had charges against non-athletes as well. I don't know that. Point there is I don't know a lot of things right now, and we'll deal with what we do know when it's presented to us. As a coach, I'm really more concerned probably about the NCAA rules and where they fit in there in terms of eligibility. But obviously, if their charges are pressed and somebody's convicted, then you deal with that when it comes. So it's kind of a wait and see thing, and we'll just let it unravel as we go.
Building on a couple of things that you said. Given that only one state has been involved in this, and there have been several players incriminated, one should assume, I would guess, that it does spread to many other states, and the numbers are larger. And you mentioned the integrity of the game. Why should people believe in the integrity of the game when, clearly athletes are betting on games?
Well, I think the key point there is betting on our games, and that is, to me, it's a deal breaker if that is in fact proven to be true. So we'll deal with that when we get there. But I think as we move forward, I think at least in my opinion, it's been a learning process for me. It's probably time for new policies from the NCAA, and I think they already have addressed that. It's probably time to take another step. I think they came out with something early May, late April. I'm not sure that's aggressive enough based on the world we're living in. But everything's got to start there. That's not something you can. It's not a compromise. A negotiation. It starts there. So, and I would also suggest, based on the numbers I'm aware of, it's probably a pretty small number in terms of the big scheme of things, but it doesn't make it right, and there's no way you can condone that.
Noah Shannon, put it out there himself a few weeks ago. What's his status, and will he be?
He's in a holding pattern like the other players. Yeah. So, to my knowledge, no crime he hasn't been accused of any crimes, but he does have an NCAA issue to deal with, and we'll let it ride out and see what the NCAA has to say about it.
To clarify,
let me go back on that too, just to give you a little more. And Noah's a really good example of this whole thing. It's given me a chance to step back a little bit and think about some things, and my wife's been involved in this. Noah's one of the best kids we have on our football team. He's a strong, respected leader, tremendous young person, and has been nothing from my standpoint than a model football player for us. I'm really proud of everything he's done. And I'm proud of the fact that he did come forward and say, I'm not sure I want to go to Indianapolis. I don't think it's right now, fair to our football team. And that gives you a little indication to his character, I think. And as I step back and look at it, just consider this. If we went out and rounded up every kid on campuses who had a beer before they were 21, and I'm not saying it's the exact parallel, but I would suggest, betting was a big thing in the 80s. I remember the FBI presenting that to us in team meetings. I would suggest it's probably a bigger thing right now, and all you have to do is look at your phones or watch TV and think you know what I'm talking about. So we're living in a little different world. I think we have to ramp up our education. Me personally, probably have to do a better job there. And I would suggest there's probably going to be some modification in policies moving forward from the NCAA. I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine that might be the case, just like the NFL. I think has a pretty realistic set of working rules, and I would like to see ours hopefully model theirs a little bit closer. That's just my 2 cents commentary.
How often do you emphasize to your players the gambling rules?
It's an annual thing. It's an annual thing. I think they know they're not supposed to do it. That hasn't changed. The world outside's changed, and again, I think I've told you before. I don't gamble, so I really haven't paid attention. I have a whether it's good or bad. I have a ability just to kind of block stuff out that I don't care about, and that's been one thing I've paid attention since early May, and it's just amazing to me. I mean, it should not come as any surprise that, you know, this is true, that those stats that were in the survey, not just athletes, it's everybody. It's just the world we live in. So, and I'm not saying we're ramming it down people's throats, but it's pretty easy to get there. It's pretty prevalent, and, you know, no kidding, we might have some guys involved. So, yeah, I think we have to rethink our educational process as well and make that a big thing.
To clarify, for the players who are in a holding pattern, what level of involvement do they currently have with the team? Are they practicing? Are they in team meetings?
Every case is a little bit individual, I'd say. I'd put it that way. With the exception of one, the guys are playing or practicing. Some are out because of injuries, etc. You know, the bigger picture I have to consider as a head coach is that they may not be here on opening day or whatever. And it might be one day, it might be, you know, 11, 12 games. I don't know. None of us know that. So you got to keep that in mind too. And, you know, out of fairness to our football team, we have to do what's best for the team too. So it's kind of a flexible equation, if you will. It's a moving target, and that's where clarity will really help us. But, you know, right now I don't know that anybody knows facts other than we are dealing with the situation.
Education that you give to the players on an annual basis, does that include guidance that they're not supposed to use like proxies, like family members, et cetera, to be placing?
Yeah, I mean, gambling's gambling, I think, you know, as far as I can understand it. Like, no matter how you do it. And one of the ironies is, you know, from what I can understand, these guys might have been better off going through bookies, which I know is illegal. That's what people my age did, you know, 40 years ago. So that's the irony of this whole thing, I guess. But all that being said, the world has changed. It's like, you know, I would say it's not a direct parallel, but the drug usage or drug testing policies of the NCAA changed radically in the last 5 years, probably because most states have legalized marijuana. So, you know, it just kind of reflects the world we live in. I'm not saying I know what the happy medium is or where it should be, but it's pretty obvious, I think, that it's time for a discussion about this. In the meantime, we'll deal with the facts and deal with the circumstances we have to deal with. We're not running from that at all. But I do think as we move forward right now, it's one thing you're going to see changing. And my sense is the NCAA is very sensitive to that. I don't think they're, you know, oblivious to this thing. I think, you know, we got new leadership there, and they seem to be a lot more in touch with what's going on, like today, currently, and that's a good thing.
Has this situation like changed the way that you're preparing leading up?
Not at all.
Well, I mean, in the sense that some guys may or may not be available. Or have you ever been in this type of situation leading up to a season?
No, and it's really not that big a deal right now, quite frankly. I mean, I know I'm not trying to be coy, but it just isn't. Noah's injured. He would be the most prominent player, to my knowledge, that's involved in this, and. You know, so as we got closer to games, let's say he was 100% healthy, which he's not. If we got closer to games, that's something we'd have to weigh and measure, because if you don't know if a player is going to be there, you got to get other guys ready to go, because we're going to play regardless. You know, we're going to play. So, you know, but right now, we'll wait and see. You know, and that's just the way it goes. Yeah. So it hasn't really been a big deal that way.
What's the plan at place kicker right now? Obviously, you're cemented in with Drew, but with Aaron's situation, what's the plan?
We brought a young guy in who is at Iowa Western. He's going to join us here from the Des Moines area. So anyway, he's joined us, and we'll see. But, you know, we're a better team if we have all of our guys healthy, obviously, especially our starters.
Kirk, when you look at, I'm going to switch to football for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at your offensive line, you've been pointing to that, you know, really since last year about the youth, inexperience, you know, injuries as kind of stunting their progress a little bit. How have they performed through camp thus far? Do you feel, you know, what do you feel like how your offensive line has performed?
Yeah, I mean, that's one area I know a little something about in football. That's about it. But, you know, I've been saying, you know, you really can't microwave maturity. You just can't do it, and that's a position where maturity really shows up. It's so again, if nobody wants to hear it, but we've had injuries. We've had some unusual personnel situations. Connor Colby's a great example, in my opinion. You know, and Connor was a really good prospect, and he's a really good young man, and he's going to be a really good player. But, you know, we threw him in there 2 years ago, and he wasn't ready. And, you know, I mean, the bottom line is there used to be a time where it was usually year 3 when the average guy got out there on the field. So my only point in bringing him up is, like, he's practicing at a far different rate than he was certainly even last year, in my opinion. He missed the spring, so this is new to him. I mentioned the newcomers come in, but we also have a handful of guys that had surgeries that didn't practice in spring ball. So this period's been really important for them as well. And my point is, like, he looks like a different football player than he did the last 2 years. And I'm not saying, we predicted that, but my feeling was, my sense was that we would see that. Mason's kind of the same way. Mason probably got thrown in there a little bit, probably asked a little bit more out of him than we had to, but that's the way it goes sometimes. You do what you can. He did a heck of a job competing. He'll be a better football player, and Logan Jones will be a better player. So start those three. I'll throw the youngin, who's a little bit older. So just that maturity factor is good. And then, a guy like Feth comes in here who's, played a lot of college football. It's a little different level competition, but, with every day he's getting better. So long story short, I think we have some competition in the group, which we haven't had. We've been trying to survive. Now we got competition, and, maybe with a little bit of luck, we'll actually be able to play at the tempo we want to play at, and that's our goal. But we're not there yet, but I feel a lot better to answer the original question about where we're at. I feel a lot better, and I think you'll see that tomorrow.
Kirk, there's been a lot of focus on the production of the wide receivers over the past couple of years. You guys added a couple pieces via the portal. I guess, have you guys really talked about how to get them more involved in the perimeter passing game, and how do you take that next step to kind of get back to the production level that you want out of that group?
Yeah, it's similar to the offensive line in some ways, but where the ball goes is all product of how they play us on defense. And I think the good news is right now, Luke Lachey's a much better player than he was a year ago. And then Eric Hall, we lost a really good player, needless to say, with Sam Laporta. But then you get a guy like Eric Hall to join the team. And, so feel pretty good about those two guys. Estranga he's in year 2 now, so he's playing better than he did last year, and he played pretty well last year. And I'll mention Stylianos in that, same thing. He came from a 1AA school, an FCS school. So to look at him last year, he struggled, quite frankly, a little bit like Van Valkenburg his first year. Now you're seeing a whole different player. And we saw that kind of in the spring, but right now he's practicing like a guy who can help us. So all of a sudden I think we have some depth there. And so as that pertains to the guys outside, I think it just makes their job a little bit easier. They still got to do their job. Nico's had a really good preseason. He's a little dinged up right now, but nothing major. Deontay Vines, a guy who's been injured in and out, had all kinds of crazy stuff happen, is having a really good preseason. We kind of thought that would happen, but it's got to happen on the field. And again, I think it's maturity, it's being around. His case, just staying on the field. So start with those two guys, and then we'll see how the other guys help out. But I think so far so good. At least we're in a little better situation, and it's really going to be about all 11 guys, and it's beyond that because you got subs and all that. But feel pretty good about that right now.
Kirk, speaking of those other guys, Caleb Brown was obviously a huge flash, bringing him out of the portal, and being a 4-star recruit coming from Ohio State. Have you seen some of that talent flash through in the few days they've been able to see?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because yes, I have seen the talent. I think all of us have seen the talent. And it's flash. That's the other key word. I think what everybody needs to remember about him is, he's only played 1 year of college football and really hasn't played much. I think he had 1 catch last year. So if you look at some of the other guys that transferred, McNamara's got a resume, Eric Hall's got a resume. Caleb doesn't. He was a really good prospect out of high school. I would say he's a better prospect now, but he's still a prospect if that makes sense. He just got dinged up yesterday too, unfortunately, after making a really good play. So I think it's just a matter of time with him too. But I think to expect the same out of him as maybe McNamara, you're looking at 2 different categories. But I'm glad he's here. He's a great young guy and has fit in really well, and he's working hard. So eager to get him back.
So 8 practices of 11 on 11 with Jake. How has he met, exceeded? What's your impressions been about what he's brought to the team, I guess?
Yeah, once we got the cadence part down a little better. And then the other thing, I keep forgetting about this, but quarterbacks don't play under center anymore. So it's been a little bit of an adjustment for him. I keep forgetting we're in a new era of football. No huddles, nobody under center. So, we're working through that. But he's been outstanding. He's a really good leader. He's a good football player. He's got good vision. He makes good decisions, and it's really been positive. So excited he's here.
Kirk, how is Seth Anderson progressing right now?
Who's that?
Seth Anderson. How's he progressing?
Oh, good.
Right now?
Yes. Kind of like Caleb, only further ahead than Caleb. He's played more football, lower level. But a great young guy, great young guy. And we didn't get to see him in the spring because he was out basically the whole spring. Works hard, great attitude, and smooth player. He's got good ability. So I'm really, I think, and I mentioned earlier, we'll know a lot more here after 2 weeks. I think, we'll know a lot more next Saturday than we know tomorrow. But I think in some cases 2 weeks, and I'm thinking about a guy like him, which I think every day is so important to him, these meetings, everything they do, they've got an opportunity to learn if they're really thinking right. So really excited about him, good young guy, and see what really matters is what they do out there in September, but he's on the right path.
What have been your impressions of Nick Jackson? How you've been able to actually see him here versus just on tape?
Yeah. So I don't know. We got 10, 15 guys that didn't practice in the spring, and you forget about Nick didn't practice in the spring, even though he's going to school and finishing. But so now he's learning everything. It's like drinking through a fire hose a little bit, but he's a pretty cerebral guy, and he's picking it up fast. And great attitudes, mature, strong, just a strong presence, and. I think he's going to be just fine. He'll be good. And I feel good about our linebackers. We don't have enough depth right now, and Carson Shire's not working. You'll see that. Should get him back sometime next week. But we need, he's a good prospect, but he's a prospect. He hasn't played enough, so we need to get him out there, get him working, and get him caught up. But that's part of the race we're on with those guys, too.
Okay. Caleb Johnson, what all do you remember about recruiting him?
Remember, he's going to Cal. Explain that, right? It's kind of random from Hamilton, Ohio. You got to admit that. A lot of schools between here and Cal. With all due respect to Cal, Berkeley, all that stuff, but it's kind of weird and random. But I'm just glad he's on our team. He's a great young guy. He's still young. He's still learning. He's got so much ability, and he's doing well. I don't mean to say it in a disparaging way, but he still has a lot more there, little things. Once he really figures that out, with Sean Williams, just can compare and contrast. Sean's practicing about as good as I've seen him ever right now. He's really doing well. But that's experience too. That's just being out there and doing things in every position. There are little things that you have to learn how to do, and he's a willing learner. So we're excited he's here.
Given some of your comments in the past about playing schools out west during the regular season, and now that you have 4 joining the conference, maybe 2 more, is this impacting your thinking about how much longer you want to do this?
No, not that, but my first thought, a couple of things. My neighbor Jamie from Cleveland, sports junkie, played Division III football, played at same high school as Chuck Knoll. In Cleveland, total sports nut. I think he's in the CIA. He says he's a software salesman, but I think he's in the CIA. He texted me this morning. He heard that scientists found out, or at least have reason to believe, there's perhaps a team on the planet Mars that's playing college football, and there are already 3 conferences negotiating with them about joining their conferences. So things have changed, certainly. And I've never been a proponent of going out west in season. Bowl games is fine. But we'll adjust. We'll figure out how to make it work. And but to the other question, and my thought a year ago was, it's not that big a deal in our sport. We travel 5 times a year. Most of them are pretty easy trips. Our guys don't miss much class time. 11 o'clock game on the West Coast is not ideal, because the turnarounds are tough anywhere. But the sports in my mind, think about the Olympic sports last year, especially if you're one of those 2 West Coast school teams where a home game is Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. The pressure it's going to put on those student athletes, and they still say student athlete, but just all those strains, flying commercial, the whole 9 yards. That was my thought a year ago, and it's interesting. I hear a lot of people talking about that now after this most recent wave, and I think that's another issue that, college sports are going to have to figure out and address, because it doesn't make sense at all. But that's not my concern, because in football it's not that big a deal, and we seem to be driving this whole thing right now. It's my 2 cents commentary, but again, it's not that it doesn't affect our world all that much. It won't affect our players all that much, other than coming back from a West Coast trip and getting here at 6 in the morning, kind of like Nevada did after they left here last year. That's hard. That's hard. But you figure it out and make it work on that week and keep going. But it's all the other people that are being affected and impacted. Think they need to rethink that a little bit. And that's just one person's opinion. Again, it doesn't affect my world a hell of a lot.
How do you think that makes college football look?
I mean, it is what it is right now. I think that's pretty obvious. And I think it's been obvious, but it really became obvious probably last July, I think, so let's just call it what it is. It's entertainment. And I'm glad to be part of it. Don't get me wrong. I'm really enjoying that. And it's still collegiate in our program. That's a goal. Like, I never wanted to not feel collegiate to our players. And I worry about that a lot. And I started worrying about that when the money got bigger, because people get a little bit more opinionated, they get a little bit more, less patient, a little grouchier and all that, probably because of gambling. And, that's what I worry about for our players. Like, just enjoy the game, enjoy the camaraderie, the teamwork. That hasn't changed, and that might be a little harder to, try to keep that going, but that's the goal. Yep.
Is that a hard thing at all to admit? I mean, I don't remember you saying that 5 or 10 years ago, that it's entertainment.
I'm old. I'm a senior citizen. I can say what the hell I think now, so what the hell. But, so it's just, the world's changed so much. And it really probably, started with Nebraska. They joined our league. And then next thing you know, we got 2 East Coast teams. So the Big Ten kind of changed a little bit. And then, we blew it up 2 years ago or a year ago. I say blew it up. We just, it's a reconfiguration. But that, we didn't start that one. And, it's just there's a lot of momentum going that direction right now. And so tying it in with my career, like you deal with whatever comes your way. I wasn't necessarily in favor of the transfer portal and some of those things, but, it's reality, so you deal with it and try to make it work in your favor and try to make it work better than somebody else can.
Rick, you've got a clear QB number 1 in Kim, but has anybody emerged as that number 2?
Yeah, I'll make that one easy for you. Labus has been out. He had a soft tissue injury back in July. So hopefully we'll get him back on the field right now, but it's clearly 1, 2, and then after that, hang on. So, it's kind of where it's at. So it's, the good news is Deacon's getting a lot of good work. Bad news is Joe hasn't been able to compete. So hopefully we'll get him back on the field here soon.
You don't see a 6'5" fullback. I know it's been talked about in the spring, but what about Hayden makes you think he can get low enough to be a fullback and it's cement? I know there's no battles finished right now, but is he kind of cemented there, or what's the fullback?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of options right now. Dusty's the other guy, a true freshman, who's done a nice job. But that is his biggest challenge, is getting leverage. That's a disadvantage of being tall. But if you can bend a little bit, which he can, it's a matter of learning how to play. And it's true at every position. Height can be an advantage or a disadvantage. So we all have our own challenges, and you figure out, what works for you and how do you really make that go. But he's been willing. He's a smart guy, and quite frankly, he just ended up here. I can't remember the whole story, but I'm glad he's here, and certainly didn't envision him being a fullback, and it's looks like a good path for him. So it's a pleasant surprise for us.
Coach, 2 more questions. Your thoughts on the growth of Logan Lee over the years, on and off the field?
Yeah, Logan mentioned injuries a little bit earlier ago, how this can impede in a career, and Logan's had a couple to deal with. And first of all, he's like a 45-year-old guy. You know him. He's a 45-year-old guy on our football team, just so mature. Only married guy on the team that fits. They probably got married 10 years ago secretly. So he's just one of those guys, really good leader, so positive, extremely hardworking. And I was telling a pro scout a couple days ago, when he got here, he's a good player, but kind of mechanical. And sometimes guys have to learn how to play, and that's how I would describe him. So he was doing good things, giving good effort, but it just wasn't. And Dallas Clark was like that, believe it or not, as a linebacker, 100 years ago. And then you get him in the right spot, and then they just keep working it. And that's where the injuries impeded the progress. But as he's gotten the reps in, boy, he's really come on to be a really good football player, and just an outstanding young guy, just a really strong, positive leader on our team.
What have you seen out of Xavier Wampa during the fall, and just what are your thoughts on what he's done?
He's done a good job. He's out there competing, and so in the back end, Schulte's the veteran guy, if you will, kind of the stabilizer right now. And then we got a bunch of other guys competing. Xavier's doing a good job, and making good progress. Entringer's the same way. He's doing a good job as well. Castro's been practicing well, played his best in the bowl game. So, it's kind of us. We got some young guys coming along, and we got an older guy like Castro, who finally got some traction in that bowl game and really looked like a Big Ten safety. Not just a specialist, if you will. And so I think we have good competition back there.
On the depth chart, you had Wamba at number 1, strong safety. Is he practicing pretty much exclusively there, or?
Yeah, those guys all kind of move around a little bit. If you're a safety, you got to really understand both positions. That's something Phil asked him to do. And but if Schulte's in there, he'll be our free safety. He's the quarterback back there.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll transition over to the outdoor practice facility. It's hot outside. Please take a cold beverage on your way out. Leftover ice cream over here.
Essentials.